All right, well, hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to What's Up Wednesday, Get Inspired, Career Preparation with Inspire. My name is George Bergstrom, and I am the Southwest Regional Coordinator for the Indiana State Library's Library Professional Development Office. I will be host, presenter, and question moderator today. um, I'd like to start off the webinar with a few quick announcements. To register for other webinars or other trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library. This session is 1 hour, so you'll get one LEU for today. If you're watching the archived recording of this webinar, the instructions on how to obtain your LEU are available in the video description on YouTube, or you can also find the instructions on the Indiana State Library's continuing education site under LEU policies. All right. So today we're going to be talking about career prep and the various resources inside of Inspire. And there was a form on the calendar for questions, and no one asked me questions. So right now I've planned it at pretty general and high level, but please, by all means, if you have questions as we're going along, or if there are certain aspects of either Inspire or sort of career prep research in general that you're interested in, go ahead and put those in the chat box, and I will try to tailor this to those questions. So again, keeping it kind of high level, I'm going to do a little bit of background on this type of research, and then we're going to look at sort of the various types or styles at which the patrons might come in asking questions. And those are people who don't really know much of anything about what they're looking for. So both an unknown career or a job. People who might know one of those two, either they know the career field they're interested in, or they know of a job or a company that they're trying to target. And then, of course, people who know both the career path they're looking for and the job or company they're trying to find out more about. And then hopefully we'll have plenty of time to do examples and questions and actually get into the different databases. So first, if you're trying to help someone do sort of career prep or research into a career, you want to obviously first start with doing that basic reference interview, finding out which of these situations they're in. You know, are they looking for a first job or a first sort of career? Are they looking to change or grow in their current field? Or are they perhaps unemployed or underemployed? And so they're really just looking for any better opportunity. And as I said, all of that really boils down to the reference interview. If you can, working with them individually, obviously I know a lot of us are really busy, so you might not be able to devote a lot of time to it, but over time, sort of working with them to sort of get the answers to some of these questions. And then once you have that in mind, you want to remember the types of information they should be looking for, or the types of places you can go to find help for them. And this is something, and I've unfortunately, bad librarian, I don't have an initial citation for this, but I was first introduced to this image when I worked at Purdue almost 15 years ago at the Management and Economics Library. And this was really something we used a lot with students, just in how you do research for any sort of course level work in that sort of undergrad or graduate level work, is that you're trying to find information from at least 3 different types of places. You're finding information about the company you might want to work for, you're finding information about the industry that they're in, and you're potentially looking at third-party sources external to both of those that are reporting on them. And we may come back to this. So when we sort of ground that in Inspire, some of the places we might want to start, if they're in that first group of they don't really know what career field they're interested in, or they don't know of a job ad or a company they're trying to target, is you might want to start them in Learning Express Library. And we'll jump into that and kind of do a lot of different examples. But as you can see from this screenshot, they have tools for that beginner sort of career prep. assessments, what types of jobs fit your skills, those kinds of tools. They have lots of resources for patrons who maybe didn't finish high school for whatever reason, and they're working on a high school equivalency. They have students who, whether they got a high school diploma or whether they did those equivalencies, who are getting ready to go to college. And then they have lots of school center resources as well. Other things you might want to sort of supplement the Inspire tools with are free resources out on the web, the Occupational Outlook Handbook, Career One Stop, LinkedIn, things like that. And this PowerPoint will be available with the recording. So, and then there are a couple of other databases inside of Inspire. We'll take a look at each of those, the Vocational and Career Collections and Vocational Studies Primer. Now, if someone knows one of those two things, they either know of a career path they're already interested in or maybe have already started down, or they know of a job or a company they're interested in working with, then you're going to be doing a little bit more of that company research. And so you'll use tools like Business Source Complete, Business Wire, News, if they know the company. And then if they know of a career job, you can use Learning Express and then some of those free resources. And we'll kind of do some examples of that. And then, of course, obviously, when they know both, we're really just bringing it all together. We're helping them learn about the career path, learn about the jobs within that, companies, etc. So you're kind of hopefully spending time with them in all of the resources. And then, unfortunately, I did not find any great resources in Inspire that helped for interview prep. But a couple of good ones are places like Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Career One Stop has some resources as well. And we can, take questions and kind of talk through some of those as we move along. So I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint. And hopefully, okay. Can everyone see my screen, which should be on Inspire at this point? Yes, awesome. So as some of you may have heard either through Wednesday Word or last month's Get Inspired webinar, there have been a few changes to the Inspire interface. Hopefully they won't trip me up, and hopefully you all have begun to experience them. But the nice thing, I think, right away is that if you, when we start on the homepage, it should look relatively familiar. But I like to jump to the subject, especially for today's work. And then we've got a couple of right here at the top that are very useful to us. The career section, and then obviously the business section. So let's start in Learning Express Library. Start is if we had a patron who didn't really know exactly what it was they were looking for. Obviously, you can just search everything. And so I could do something simple like librarian. Oh, lovely. It worked before. Or I could jump into one of these sections. So let's say we go into career prep and we want to learn more about a specific career. And then we've got all kinds of careers, sort of industries we could look at, job search and workplace skills, and then lots of different things to look at. All right. And also at the top here, we have all those sort of high level concepts we looked at before. So if we were working with someone who wanted to improve their skills in an area, we've got math, reading, writing, citizenship, and same under college, but then we have a few others like science and grammar. So there's a whole lot of good information in here. Let's say we were interested in health. We can then, oh, right, it's going to lock it out. Well, let's do Google sign in real quick. So it looks like they've now put almost everything behind a sign in. And I believe the reason they're doing that is because those test prep and other sort of multi-step, I just signed in. Lovely. Oh, well, the fun of live demos. But what you get is information about careers. So stuff like what education is required to get a job in that field, outlook, employment outlook information. So, number of openings across the country, things like that. So it's a really good way to sort of explore areas that you're unaware of and learn about career paths that you might not be familiar with. Another big one, especially nowadays, is people who might be interested in starting their own business. So the Small Business Reference Center has some really good resources. And this is obviously very much like searching any EBSCO database. So I could do a quick keyword search for something like business plan, and I'd find resources on how to create business plans. I could limit to, source type, all the typical things. And if you look at the larger menu, I could limit those few thousand down to just business plans, and I would actually see some samples. So this could be a good tool for anyone who's thinking about starting their own business and they just want to see what a business plan that was used might look like. Are there any questions so far? All right. So the two vocational career tools that were in here are each developed somewhere in that border between high school and college students material. So the description's written by EBSCO. I think for this one, it's more learning about the careers, and the other one, it's more college level courses in those careers. So I might learn about things within librarianship. And obviously, just like any other EBSCO database, it's going to go back as far as they have information available. So if I actually wanted to learn about modern librarianship, I probably wouldn't want to go back to 1950. So you can see I've got the slider. But as you saw, at least for my fat fingers, that's a little difficult. So you could also just type in the box. To make limits. You can limit to full text. Obviously, if you were in a college level class, you could limit to peer-reviewed articles. And then sort of all your fairly standard database limiting tools. So there might be some good, interesting information in here from sources within that industry. So if they weren't quite sure what it was like to be a librarian, for example, you might find stuff from publications we're pretty familiar with, so School Library Journal, Publishers Weekly, etc., that might talk about what it's like to be a practicing librarian or electrician or nurse, whatever field that we're searching for. And then the vocational studies primer, I think this is the one that's intended just a little bit more for academic level classwork, but in those vocations. But you may have a patron who could get some good information out of it as well. So just a different set of sources. So here might be some good information on the industry itself. And if you think back to that triangle, this is the kind of stuff you may be interested in pointing people to if they're unsure of a particular path. Maybe they feel they have some aptitude for being an electrician, or they've heard some good things about it, but they weren't sure if it was a stable career path. Well, you could look at sources like this and see, maybe the good and the bad of working as an electrician. So sources about the industry itself could be very useful. Entrepreneurial studies is very much a pair to Small Business Reference Center, but maybe not just starting a store or sort of a traditional business, but if you're really thinking outside the box. So if you've got someone you're helping with that, there's some really good tools in there. And Indiana Career Connect, I did not get a chance to play with as much as I'd like, but it looks like all of the resources from the workforce development and Work One have sort of been brought into this new portal. So you can actually search for jobs here. You have a resume building tool in here, which is kind of nice. Ways to find out about schools in Indiana, so both colleges and other vocational options within the state, as well as some demographic data about projections of types of career paths that might be growing or shrinking within the state. So it's one I'm going to have to take a little more deeper dive into, but it looks like it could be very valuable for helping out patrons, especially those who are definitely planning on staying within the state of Indiana. So lots of tools here, great ways to learn about careers and different job types if that's what your patron needs. Now, if they already feel like they know enough about being an electrician or a librarian or whatever, but they want to learn more about the various employers that might be a place to go. If it is a large enough business, I would probably start with Business Source Ultimate, I guess it's now called. Change the name all the time. Oops, why did that not that's mental note? That should have gone straight into the database. Okay. So, oops. So maybe they live over near Knox County and they want to learn more about Toyota. And there should be plenty of other examples of companies within the state that you could help find information for. So if you know the specific company, you can obviously search directly for it. When you're doing that, obviously the same couple of things we already talked about apply. I really don't need to go back as far as this database goes. So I could limit the date and eliminate whatever that was, about 80% of the results. And then a couple of things you might want to look for. One would be what's called the SWOT analysis. That stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And these are a really quick look at a company. And again, you're not going to find one of these for every company. Unfortunately, you're mainly going to find them for large companies. But in this case, we have an 8-page document. Several of the pages are not critical, but obviously this chart and then the descriptors of all of these bullet points are what can be really helpful. So it's telling you from an outside sort of business analyst's point of view, what are the bullets within these 4 categories that are good and bad about this company. So obviously one of their strengths is they're very diverse geographically. They have good R&D capabilities to help keep pace with technology, and they have a strong market position. And kind of you can see those 4 different areas. What I liked, certainly when I was working with students at the college level, but this should translate very easily to patrons of any level who are looking for a job opportunity, is once they've targeted a career path, so something in the automotive industry in this example, and once they've sort of worked on resumes and feeling comfortable with their own background, they want to learn about the company itself, because inevitably you hope to get that job interview, and you want to be able to translate your background and your strengths into helping them either take care of one of their weaknesses or one of their threats, or creating examples of how you can help them capitalize on the opportunities that they may have as a company. So a document like this is a great resource for finding out ways you can tie your background and experience to what that company might need. So that's one avenue I might look at for a patron who knows a company they're either already scheduled an interview with, or a company they're trying to target. They might also want to look at other news within, sort of more textual than just that quick report, and find out things about the company. So obviously, this one might tell us why they're not experiencing a downturn because of the chip shortage that's going on right now. Or you might find one, about positives or negatives of how that company is performing. All ways that you can sort of hopefully learn about them and decide whether you even want to apply or interview, but also ways that you can, like I say, help prepare yourself for that interview, or preparing those resume documents and other things to show why you'd be a valuable asset. In that same vein of learning about the company, you possibly also want to learn about the industry. And when you're doing that, you probably want to look for industry profiles. And I'm not going to sort of skim through all these and try, oh, here we go, there's a BMI one. Now it's just Mexico. But basically, it should be a document somewhat similar to that SWOT analysis that was just for the company, but this kind of looks at the industry as a whole. And while they don't label it the same way, you should see very similar sort of bulleted lists of things that the entire industry is either advantaging from or possibly could be a detriment to that industry. And so, just learning some of those things and being prepared helps you out in both the resume prep, interview, and then hopefully once you're successfully in that job or in that field, sort of helps you stay on top. So those are kind of the 2 ways I would use Business Source. It's interesting, it says complete here, but it said ultimate on the first screen. Well, whatever the name they want to use, that's how I would use that database. I'll stop here and pause. Are there any questions before we kind of move on? All right. So those are some of the really key tools that I would pick up from Inspire. Learning Express library. If your patron knows little to nothing about the career path they're interested in. Small Business Reference Center and entrepreneurial studies kind of combined if they're interested in opening their own business. And then some combination of the two vocational databases, as well as Business Source, if you're trying to learn more about a career, a job, or a company or industry. Now those are all great. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, not everything is in Inspire as much as we'd like it to be. So I would supplement those with things like I mentioned, and again, the PowerPoint will be available, but Career One Stop is a great tool. And it does things similar to Learning Express in that you can explore careers and take different skill assessments if you don't know much about a career. You can, find trainings, do job search tasks. But the one thing, and let me see where they've hidden it. There we go. Well, actually, we do two things. So we'll do a career profile just so you can kind of see what one of these looks like. And this should look very similar to, here's the search box. There we go. This should look very similar to what Learning Express gives you. But I didn't want to take the time to fight logging in. So you should get sort of descriptions of what people do in that field. You should get basic data about it, and then breakdowns by more specified roles within the larger field, and then the types of education level that are required within the field, activities that might be performed on a daily basis. So it's a really high level breakdown of that occupation. And you can get this here, you can get it in Learning Express. And then, once they've seen a few, and you can kind of do these in either order. I've worked with people who do the sort of assessments first, and those might suggest a career path. Or I've seen people who they know a little bit about what they want, so they might look at the career profiles and some other things, and then find out what skill bases are positive or work well in that field. And then they can take the assessments to kind of see if they already have those skill bases or whether they feel like they need to improve them. You can then work through the training, the job searching. But another really useful thing in this tool is you can do a bit more. Oh, there we go. So we've got stuff on Salary Finder negotiating, learning about the career. So we saw that really high level data in that overview in the profile. Come on, they change this every time. There we go. But you can also then get a breakdown more geographically specific. So sort of the Indiana versus the national average at the low, middle, and high points. And because I live closer to Kentucky than Indianapolis, I can do very close to me zip code wise. And now instead of the state of Indiana or the state of Kentucky, I am looking at just the Louisville area. And I can get those either as a yearly or as an hourly basis. So there's just lots of ways to kind of get this kind of breakdown in Career One Stop. Another one of the free tools that you might want to show people is Glassdoor. Oh, of course. Well, it was free, but I guess everyone either has Google or Facebook, right? All right. And so here, I would get actual job ads. I should get some salary stuff. But what I should also get, if I can find where they've hidden it, is they used to, come on, don't tell me they've taken it away. They had like sample interview questions for industries. That was one of the coolest features, and now I don't see it. Oh well, I'll have to find another tool to share with you all. You can also get review. Now this is kind of like social media for job searching. So you should be able to, if you either search for a company, or you should somehow get to reviews of the employer. No. Again, it looks like they've done a complete redesign. Oh yeah, here we go. So people rate, and I think it's on a 5-point scale, but it's not real obvious right now. Please do share the place on Glassdoor where you can get the interview questions. Yes, if I find it, I will absolutely share it after today's session. But if you look up an employer, if they're in this tool, you can get what other users have rated them for on things like compensation and benefits, their values, advancement opportunities, and work-life balance. Oh, top navigation. Aha, there we go. Look at that. I don't want to limit that to Louisville. I just want. So here we go. And now we've just got what users have posted. Now this is a great for information literacy. No, I've already. All right. It is crowdsourced in that they want you to contribute to the database. And I have done this before for other employers I've had, but it looks like it's locking me out for now. But if you have a patron who is truly on the job hunt, I think they would be willing to provide at least a small amount of data to this tool. And once you get in there, you can see that there are 252 sample interview questions that have been shared by job applicants looking for librarian jobs in this database. And now it won't even let me go back. Let me see what happens. There we go. At least I got out of the loop. So it is there. You can either share salary information. You can share reviews of companies, discover companies, compare companies. I mean, this one is just really awesome. But because it is sort of a crowdsourced social media type platform, I'd love to use this as an opportunity to do a little bit of teaching with evaluation of information, in that those sample interview questions are great. And that's usually more neutral, but especially the company reviews are often done by people who have a beef with the company. Think about it. like you would any review on Amazon or any other service. You're probably not going to take time to review something if you're fairly neutral about it. If you absolutely love it, or if you've somehow been incentivized, you might put in a review. Or if you absolutely hate the thing, you'll probably, or had a bad experience, you'll put in the review. So that part of it, I'm always a little more hesitant of, and I try to stress when I show people how to use this, that while those are almost always the experiences of real people, you got to look at things like how long ago did they make that review. You've got to keep in mind, you know, where they might have just been fired, or they might have had some bad experience. And the same with all the positive reviews. Were they given by employees who do have that positive experience with the employer, or were they incentivized in some way, or did the company go in and do fake reviews? So I tend to steer away from that side of things. The salary data is usually pretty good, especially since I have compared it with other sources like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and like Career One Stop and some other places, and the numbers seem to be pretty in line with national averages and other things like that. So the salary ranges as a whole for job types are really accurate as far as I can tell. The salary information on individual employers, it's probably fairly good. And then the interview questions can be very interesting to find out about. And so then I would probably, yes, look for specific companies, but also I believe you can search it by job type. So you could just do, I'm interested in being an accountant. So what types of interview questions are asked of typical accountant jobs? So that's another great tool. It's unfortunately a type of tool that is not in Inspire in any way, shape, or form. Okay, as I kind of reorganize my screen, I'll kind of stop and ask if there are any other questions before we move on. All right. So I am going to stop sharing that just briefly. And just kind of go back to this and recap. So if you're working with a patron who is very early on in their career journey, or who is sort of making a complete change, and they're not necessarily sure where they want to go, one of the first things I would talk about is when they're doing this research, you want to try to find information from, if possible, all 3 points on this triangle. You definitely want to get stuff from the companies you're interested in, but they have reason to sort of release the stuff that makes them look the best, right? And you want to find stuff from the industry that they're in. Is the industry growing, shrinking? Is it being challenged by upstart businesses, things like that? And if you can, you want to get outside sources. So things like newspapers, industry journals, etc., that are sort of talking about either the company or the industry from what we hope is a neutral perspective. Right? And we can do that. Oops. Too many tabs. We can do that in Inspire with starting with things like Learning Express Library, and the various vocational databases and business source type databases if you want to learn about a career path or a company or an industry. If you see an industry you're interested in, but obviously want to start your own business, you can use the resources in Small Business Reference Center and the entrepreneurial studies source, which are great. If you just need a good job board, it looks like, and again, I have not fully explored this one yet, but the Indiana Career Connect looks like it is gathering all the resources from the Department of Workforce Development and Work One Indiana, or Work One, whatever it was called, into a new web portal. And so that may be a good thing to explore. And then once they're comfortable with, oh, and then of course, Indiana Career Connect did have the resume builder and some other tools that might be very useful. And once they sort of feel comfortable with the type of job they're looking for, and maybe even an employer they're going to target, and they've done the various application processes, you might want to steer them towards Career One Stop or Glassdoor or LinkedIn to learn about people within that company or interview type questions, salary information, especially for negotiations, if hopefully we're successful in helping people get that far. Okay. That's kind of a lot to go over in 45 minutes. So I'm going to take one more pause. If there are any questions. Oh, I do see a hand raised thing. Do you have a question, Amy? You should be able to unmute yourself now. Or you can type it in. Okay. Hand was down. Must mean you got it answered. Well, don't hesitate to type in the chat if oh, interesting. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that hand raise function. Any other questions? All right, well, I'm going to stop sharing this so I can grab the link for the LEU form. And that should give you all time to think of any more questions you may have while I'm doing that. All right, so there is the request form for an LEU certificate. I will be happy to stick around if anyone wants to chat and take questions, but obviously I don't want to keep you any longer than necessary, so we can go ahead and stop the recording, Lisa, and